Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our last third Thursday of the year. So this is brought to you by the BC Wine Grape Council and our R&D committee. And today we're going to talk about clean plants. And so, especially timely topic since lots of us are replanting. And it's a great time to ensure that we have clean plants and that we reduce the virus presence in the valley. So we have two speakers today. Our first is Sarah Brewery, and she's with CFIA. With the International Affairs branch and the Market Access Division. Before that, Sarah spent 8 years with CFIA's Policy and Programs branch as a horticulture program specialist, and during that time, she managed the policy aspects of the CFIA certification programs for grapevines, fruit trees, and small fruit plants, and also chaired the North American Plant Protection Organization working group for the review and update of the North American Regional Standard for the import and movement of grapevines and fruit trees. So after that, we'll have Darian from CGCN and get into more specifics about what the CGCN is doing to ensure clean plants. So welcome, Sarah, and you can go into presentation mode and start. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Kathy, and it's really great to be here. So let me just get this started and hopefully it works. Okay, everyone can see my title screen?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Oh, something just disappeared for me. 1 second. There we go. Okay, so as Kathy mentioned, I've been with the CFIA for 17 years, actually, in a variety of different roles. And in recent years, this has involved a large focus on some of the elements of CFIA's grapevine certification program. So I understand that, there have been some questions about the role that CFIA plays in grapevine certification, and especially when it has to do with things like import requirements and certification review of foreign exports. So I'm going to give a really brief overview today of some of the elements of the program, what the CFIA does, and why we do it. So CFIA, for those who aren't familiar, is a science-based regulator, and we have a very broad mandate that includes food safety, animal health, plant health, and international market access. And for the purposes of today's presentation, I'm going to focus mostly on the plant protection mandate because that's really what we're talking about when we're talking about the grapevine requirements. And our mandate under the plant protection umbrella is essentially to protect Canada's plant resource base from the impact of introduced pests. And how do we do this? Well, basically, we put regulations in place and policies in place for specific pests, as well as for the plants or the commodities that might harbor or spread these pests. So at the CFIA, our authority is granted by the Plant Protection Act and regulations, and we communicate these requirements and these regulations through tools such as program directives. And I'll mention a few of those in a minute. So grapevines alone, as I'm sure you're all well aware, can be host to many, many different pests, but from a CFIA perspective, they're host to over 30 different pests that are regulated by Canada. And this includes various bacteria, fungi, viruses, nematodes, and insects. A large part of what the CFIA does to help meet its plant health mandate is through the use of import requirements. And because grapevines are considered to present quite a high risk for the introduction of plant pests, the CFIA regulates grapevine imports from all origins. So that includes the US and all of Europe. And this applies to all propagative plant material of Vitis. So this includes grafted plants, rootstocks, cuttings, and also in vitro material. So how does the CFIA establish these import requirements? Well, these are based on the pests that are regulated by Canada, as well as the identification and mitigation of specific risks. And this is done through a process called a pest risk analysis or assessment. And there are a variety of international standards which we are obliged to follow as Canada is a signatory to the International Plant Protection Convention. And CFIA's current import requirements for grapevines specifically are housed in a document called D9434. However, I will put a little plug in that this is under review. Some of you may have seen a consultation that went out last year with some proposed updates, and we are expecting that updated directive to be published in 2025. So another organization which the CFIA participates in quite actively is called the North American Plant Protection Organization, or NAPO. And this is the regional plant protection organization for Canada, Mexico, and the United States. And what NAPO does is it provides a forum for both public and private sectors to collaborate in the protection of North America's plant resources while facilitating safe trade. It also facilitates or supports, the development and implementation of science-based standards through the work of various NAPO expert groups, or EGs. And these standards are called Regional Standards for Phytosanitary Measures, or RSPMs. And what they basically do is provide North American-based guidance and recommendations for various plant protection topics of mutual interest. So where am I going with all this, you might be asking? Well, NAPO does have a very specific standard that specifically deals with grapevines and fruit trees, and this is called RSPM 35. And this document presents guidelines for the movement of this material into and within the 3 NAPO member countries. So both to safeguard these regions from new pest introductions, as well as to help facilitate safe trade. And most recently in 2022, we completed a 3-year review and update of this standard. And this was done by subject matter experts from all 3 countries. This included industry, academia, and government. So it was quite a large undertaking. We did quite a thorough review and update of the standard, and it's available online. And this is the standard that the CFIA uses as a guideline for the development of our import requirements and certification program review. So RSPM 35 covers several different risk mitigation options, really depending on the end use of the material in question. If you're importing something to be planted versus importing something for scientific research and destructive analysis, for example. And this includes the use of a systems approach. And this is really the basis of any certification program that is evaluated by the CFIA. So on this slide, I'm just showing a little bit about what goes in, what's considered when we are talking about a systems approach. There are a number of standards that address systems approaches, different ISPMs and RSPMs. But for those who may not be familiar, basically a systems approach is a combination of phytosanitary measures, at least 2 of which must act independently from each other. These measures should be preventative rather than reactive, and the system as a whole needs to be auditable. And because of this, this type of approach is really ideal for use in situations where more general or specific risk mitigation measures alone, such as like a single endpoint inspection or a treatment, may be ineffective or inefficient. A great example in grapevines is for phytoplasmas and viruses. So this is why the CFIA has required that any grapevines being imported into Canada must originate from a virus certification program that is administered by the country of export and has been reviewed and approved by the CFIA. So as well, within RSPM 35, it outlines the essential elements of a certification program, some of which you can see here on the screen. These elements, as written in this guideline, are not necessarily prescriptive, but really provide kind of that outline or guideline and best practices of what should be considered when building or evaluating a certification program. And really, these elements are meant to be used in the development of import or domestic movement policies, or in the evaluation of programs used for export purposes by other countries. And these are many of the elements that CFIA considers when evaluating a foreign certification program. I will note that often these requirements may also be coupled with additional phytosanitary risk mitigation measures, such as post-harvest treatment or post-entry quarantine requirements. A good example of this is that Canada requires that grapevines imported from Europe originate from a certification program, but also undergo hot water treatment, and that is specifically for phytoplasmas that are known to occur in those regions. So back to the CFIA's program. The CFIA currently allows the import of certified grapevines from 3 countries, which is the United States, France, and Germany. And within the United States, programs are evaluated on a state level because that's how they're administered. There are currently 4 US states approved to export material to Canada, and these are California, New York, Oregon, and Washington. When the CFIA approves a program, they receive a list of approved participants, and this is really to help internally with the issuance of import permits. However, most of these lists are also now available online, especially for the US. And the list of approved sources for France and Germany is maintained within the CFIA import directive. I will mention also that approved material is still subject to inspection and audit sampling when it arrives in Canada. And this is supported by the CFIA's Center for Plant Health. They conduct regular annual surveillance of various programs each year through this sampling and audit program. So we do often get requests for new access, either from countries who are interested in exporting to Canada or from Canadian importers who are interested in accessing new material. And in these situations, the CFIA will work directly with the National Plant Protection Organization of the country of export to evaluate the program through various things like a documentation review. Often there's a site visit and or testing of the plants by the CFIA, either on import or in advance. And this is really to ensure that the program sufficiently mitigates all the identified risks and meets the criteria that was outlined in RSPM 35. And while these program requirements are established by the Policy and Programs branch of the CFIA, we really rely on our colleagues in Science and Operations branch to help support its delivery. So I will take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the CFIA's Center for Plant Health, although I will also mention there's a few of my colleagues on the line, I think, who can also jump in if there's additional questions. But basically, the CFIA's Center for Plant Health, or the Sydney Lab, as we often call it, plays a very pivotal role in the grapevine program, as they are Canada's only post-entry quarantine research and diagnostic facility for virus testing of grapevines, as well as fruit-bearing trees and small fruit plants. The Sydney Lab also maintains the National Repository of Generation 1 or G1 virus-tested grapevine varieties, and these feed into the Canadian Export Certification Program, as well as for domestic distribution. I will mention that they maintain a minimum of 2 vines per accession, and then when they're distributed, the other facilities scale up the production of these G1 vines. And I know there was some interest in the current status and the new building. So I can mention that the big news has been the recent opening of the new building. And as of December 2024, there were activities that were consolidated from approximately 20 buildings on the site into one large complex that houses lab, office, greenhouse, and header house complex. So very exciting. So just to kind of wrap up the updates for the Sydney Lab, as an update to the activities for 2025, the priority for the lab will be focused on post-entry quarantine sample reception. For those who may not be familiar with the PEQ program, this is often used for material that doesn't meet Canada's certification requirements, because the requirement is if it can't be imported through the standard process, then it would need to go through full virus testing at Sydney Lab, which takes approximately 3 years minimum. And they do have space in this program to accept several more grapevine accessions in 2025. And due to the move to the new building, there will be limited capacity for repository distributions in early 2025. However, we have provided the lab's generic email address. So if you had questions about either of those services, you're welcome to reach out. And then maybe I'll just put a little plug in for other questions. If you ever have questions about general import or domestic movement requirements, or anything that the CFIA may play a role in, we always encourage folks to go to their local CFIA office as a starting point. The inspectors are very well versed in requirements, and can help usually find an answer very quickly, or reach out to other folks in the agency who may be able to help. So that's always a really great place to start if you do have any questions about your grapevines or anything that falls to the CFIA mandate. So that's my little plug for who to talk to. And that's all I've got for now. Happy to answer any questions. Hopefully that gave everybody kind of a high-level introduction to the CFIA's piece. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sarah. We've decided we'll take questions at the end of both presentations, as Darian's presentation may answer some questions that you have.
Perfect.
And so we'll circle back at the end. And so now I'll introduce Darian. Darian Tempriel is the CGCN, so the Canadian Grapevine Certification Network. Oh, I'm glad that's up there. So I got it right. She's the executive director, and she's been in that role since 2023, but she's been involved with the organization since 2020 as the project manager. So Darian has been involved in the grape and wine industry since 2019 as a summer student in business, marketing, and events. She was the coordinator for the Grape Growers of Ontario. Since then, she's completed a Bachelor of Business Administration from Brock University and MBA from McMaster University. And she also works part-time as project manager of Ontario Grape and Wine Research Incorporated. So welcome, Darian, and I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Kathy. Are you guys able to see my screen and hear me okay?
Looks good.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you, Kathy, Kate, and Tyrion for inviting CGCN to speak today. I know that CGCN has been involved with a lot of the associations in more of an advisory capacity these past few months as the replant programs were in development. And I know that a lot of the information that we've been sharing has probably been beneficial to you, so why not share it with the rest of the industry? So thank you for allowing CGCN to present today. I'll give you a very brief overview here. I'll cover a refresher on 3 certification programs that we administer in Canada. I will provide a little bit more information on the Clean Vines Frequently Asked Questions information form that CGCN released at the beginning of December, and that is now also posted on our website. And I will also share the sources of CGCN clean plant material that you can find within Canada. So first, I'll go into our Clean Plant Network, some very brief information on the 3 programs that we administer. So we have 2 certification protocols. The first one, our highest tier, is called the Certified Plus Protocols. So here, this centers around propagation of CGCN's G1 repository material, which is currently tested and held clean at the CFIA Center, like Sarah was talking about earlier. And then we also have a second location located here in St. Catharines, Ontario, at the Cool Climate Enology and Viticulture Institute at Brock University. So these repositories are holding material that is tested and held clean for over 25 viruses and pathogens of concern. And I believe that BCWGC and BCGGA have put together a toolkit that explains a longer list of those viruses. So I won't go into detail with this presentation today. We Consistently on an annual basis, add new material to our repository. So if it's not already available within the public domain, sometimes we will also be adding it into CGCN's repository, which is why we say that nurseries participating in our program are granted exclusive access to some material. It takes about 2 to 3 years, as Sarah was saying, before vines are available for order from our repositories. So if we added vines in 2025, which we're going to do, hopefully, if we can get access to some of this material, then you probably won't see that material until about 2027 or 2028. But we are always taking input from industry, wineries, growers, anyone in the grape and wine industry who wants to see certain varietals or certain clones available within CGCN's repository. So please get in touch with any recommendations that you may have. CGCN posts our G1 repository inventory to our website. So please check that out. If there's something that you don't see on there that you would like to see available, then please get in touch with myself or CGCN staff and we can add that to our list to see if we can add that in a future year. So we're working with nurseries here at the G1A up through G4 levels, and that G4 material that often goes to the grower will be called in classified certified plus material. Our second tier or our middle tier of certification is called the certified program. So here, this is testing already existing vineyard blocks for the 25 plus viruses and pathogens of concern. So instead of working with nurseries at the G1A through G4 level, it typically starts at generation 3 and generation 4 levels. And material here is approximately available for order in about 1 year or less. And the resulting grapevines are classified as certified. I want to note that while this program isn't quite as rigorous as our Certified Plus program, this certified program allows nurseries to provide certified grapevines to buyers in a timely manner, and it does not compromise on thorough virus testing. And the virus testing is right now is conducted also here in Ontario at Brock University. And lastly, our lowest tier of certification is called the verification program. And this was actually put in place to provide a temporary option for virus-tested grapevines until a sufficient stock of certified and certified plus material has been propagated under those two programs. So this program is only testing for 4 viruses of concern, which is leaf roll 1, leaf roll 3, red blotch, and tomato ring spot virus. Material here will also be available in 1 year or less once it is added to the program, and the vines are classified as verified. But I want to note and highlight that we are phasing this program out by 2028, and we will allow vines to be sold under this protocol up until July 31st, 2029. So any nurseries that are participating within this program at this moment in time, we are going to be working on a transitionary model and encouraging them to join one or both of our certified programs, certified plus programs. So now I'll walk us through the important points, common misconceptions, questions and answers you should look for from nurseries you're dealing with in our Clean Vines Frequently Asked Questions. So we put this sheet together. It was developed by CGCN, but in collaboration with the British Columbia Wine Grape Council, Grape Growers of Ontario, Council de Vins de Quebec, and the Grape Growers Association of Nova Scotia. And this was to answer general questions about clean grapevines and why we wanted to clarify our misconceptions and empower growers to make informed decisions. So jumping right into the questions that we commonly get, what does the term virus-free grapevines really mean? Very simple answer. It's actually quite inaccurate to say virus-free. And this is because you can never guarantee 100% virus-free anything. So this could just mean that there's a low amount of virus during testing that may evade detection, for example. And different programs or different certification programs test for / or may allow different viruses, so their standards can vary from region to region. What we prefer to say is terms like certified clean or virus tested, which is a better way to explain the benefits of the program and avoids misinterpretation or misrepresentation. Now, we've put together a list of questions that we thought would be helpful for growers to ask their nurseries when they're looking to buy clean vines and to really listen to the answers that your nurseries are providing to you. So first, are these vines certified, and if so, by what organization or what program? So domestic material should be sourced from CGCN participating nurseries whenever possible. We are the only domestic certification program in Canada. As you heard, that CFIA is mainly dealing with imported or international certified vines. So make sure that even when you're buying vines, CGCN vines from a CGCN participating nursery, or any nursery for that matter, that the material you want is certified. It is very common for a nursery to produce both certified and non-certified material. And CGCN does not certify entire nurseries. We only certify the plants that they produce under our programs. So again, highlighting the fact that you want to make sure the material that you are purchasing is certified. Another question that you can ask is, what viruses are these vines certified against and tested for? So it's important to ensure that at a minimum, the vines you're purchasing are tested for viruses that are most concerning and economically significant for your region. So in Canada, CGCN has determined these to be red blotch, leaf roll 1 and 3, and tomato ring spot virus, as well as the quarantine and regulated pests as CFIA has denoted within their regulations. CGCN's program is testing for over 25 viruses and pathogens of concern in our 2 certified and certified plus programs. However, in the verification program, we are only testing for the 4 viruses of concern that are listed here. And it is always our recommendation, it is always our first recommendation, to buy certified or certified plus vines because they are more stringent than any other certification program, at least here within Canada. And if you are sourcing material from outside of Canada, be sure that the plants are certified against the viruses of concern. And these important viruses listed here, as well as CFIA's quarantine pests and regulated pests. And here's just a helpful question you can ask to give you a little bit more confidence in the answers that your nurseries are providing you with. So what diagnostic method is used to test the certified propagation blocks? We are using in our certified and certified plus programs high throughput sequencing, which is a cutting edge diagnostic method, which is extremely sensitive and able to detect viruses known and unknown. We are also using quantitative PCR, which is pathogen specific, but can provide information on the level of virus present in a positive sample. Then we have regular PCR, which is the same method as quantitative PCR, but only provides a yes or no result. And then ELISA is sometimes actually used in international programs as well, which is the least sensitive and not comprehensive and not as widely used in Canada. I wanted to highlight this question just so knowing more about the quality and sensitivity of diagnostic methods, it may give you insight into how confident you can be that the certified material you're purchasing is actually clean. It is not enough in some instances to just do visual inspections. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Very common question that CGCN gets asked is if we certify against crown gall, and do other certification programs certify against crown gall. So that's just a little picture of what crown gall may look like. It's kind of like a growth on a vine. Very short answer, no. It takes a very long time to be detectable in a plant, and even clean vines can be infected after planting if the bacteria is present in the soil, for example. So under CGCN's Certified Plus program, grapevines produced and propagated according to the protocols regarding Allorazobium, I believe is the way you pronounce it, or the bacteria that causes crown gall. It can be distinguished as a source from crown gall tested plants. So CGCN's G1 repository is tested for crown gall, and therefore the nurseries that are propagating from those plants will be able to make the distinction that those plants are sourced from crown gall tested plants. So how come vines can never be fully guaranteed clean? So some viruses or pathogens can remain dormant in vines for a long time without showing any symptoms. And new viruses or virus strains can evolve in natural conditions, such as in the vineyard or after planting. So there's no certification programs that we are aware of that can offer a 100% guarantee of virus-free status. So now we're going to get into the details of you've purchased the clean vines, you have them, you've planted them, but what can you do to now protect your clean vines after they were planted? What can you do to protect your vineyard? So you started clean, as I've mentioned, purchasing vines from a CGCN source, certified, certified plus, verified. But if you are sourcing internationally, or from Canadian nurseries that may not be participating in CGCN programming, at least make sure that the vines are tested for the most relevant viruses, as I previously discussed. Those 4 viruses, leaf row 1, 3, red blotch, tomato ring spot virus. And now staying clean, what can you do? After you've planted those clean vines, that basically means that you're implementing precautionary processes at the vineyard level once the certified vines are planted. So it's important to do everything you can within your control to keep clean vines from getting infected so they live longer and continue to provide quality fruit. So some very easy things you can implement. I've got 4 suggestions here. First is field inspections. So monitor for visual symptoms, especially during the start of the growing and harvest seasons. Different viruses show symptoms at different times of the year. So for example, fan leaf typically shows very early in the growing season, where red blotch and leaf roll are shown very late in the growing season. Equipment cleaning. So this will help to prevent spread of insect vectors caused by movement of equipment through the vineyard. And this is especially important if you're moving equipment between certified and non-certified blocks. Always start with your certified clean blocks first. And this is so that if you do pick up any little unwanted hitchhikers on the equipment, that they don't make it into the clean blocks and then further spread. Vector control. So you can use regular treatment schedules and pest management strategies that comply with your provincial regulations and best practices. So good resources here are BCWGC's website under the research or the R&D initiatives heading, and then also on BCGA's website under their resources. And the last recommendation here is to test and remove vines. So if vines are showing signs of infection, get them tested and remove all the positives and replant if you wish to with certified clean material. The earlier an infection is detected, the higher your chances of reducing the virus spread, because there is no cure once plants are infected. And actually, as a recent recommendation by Mark Fuchs of Cornell, he actually suggested zonal roguing to further prohibit spread. And this involves not only removing the vine that has actually tested positive, but also the neighboring vines, whether they are starting to show infection or not. And this is because oftentimes plants will not show infection for a matter of a few years. So if you have a positive vine, the neighboring ones may not show symptoms until 2 or 3 years later. And then by that time, it's too late. So this is just another precautionary measure to further limit infections in your vineyards. And lastly, on the frequently asked questions, what are the benefits of planting certified clean vines? So certified vines are likely going to be more expensive to purchase than non-certified vines, which if you're purchasing non-certified vines, it is a short-term cost-cutting strategy. But if you continue to have to rogue infected vines and replant every few years, the upfront cost savings from buying non-certified vines will disappear very quickly, especially if you can't sell the fruit from the infected vines. And there's multiple studies that have been done, unfortunately not right here in Canada as far as I'm aware, but just over the border, at least here in Ontario for us, either at New York or in California, that have demonstrated the benefits of virus testing and planting clean material in an economic sense. But this is a goal of CGCN to conduct some of this research in the very near future. So a long-term business strategy as a grower should include planting certified virus-tested vines, starting clean, and as well as being proactive in maintaining the health of your vineyard, which is staying clean. So not only are you more likely to save on the replanting costs in the long term, but your healthy vines will produce better fruit, putting you in a better position to see economic gains from the grapes that you're selling. So now you know about the programs, you're equipped and empowered with all the information to make sure you're making informed decisions when purchasing vines, but where can you buy the CGCN vines? So under our verification program, which is testing for the 4 viruses of concern, these are the 4 nurseries you can purchase those vines from. And under our Certified Plus program, these 3 nurseries are also producing vines tested for over the 25 viruses and pathogens of concern. One, which you may recognize being Agroforest Biotechnologies. In BC, they are producing vines using tissue culture practices. So I highly recommend you check their websites or contact them directly to inquire about availability of CGCN vines. But if you're working with a nursery that isn't already listed on this slide here and you want to get them involved, please pass on my contact information or pass on their contact information to me, and I'd be more than happy to arrange a meeting. We are always accepting new nurseries for our Certified Plus and our certified programs, but please note that in the verification program, we are phasing that out by 2028. And lastly, before I wrapped up my presentation here today, I just wanted to share that since CGCN wants to be this resource to empower growers to make more informed decisions, I wanted to share where you can get this information from. So we have a bi-monthly e-newsletter. So we release a newsletter every other month. We release one for December. So the next one will be coming in February. And this is on a multitude of topics. So lately we've provided updates on certification programs and opportunities to get growers or nurseries involved, news releases, upcoming conferences and recaps of those conferences, and then of course other industry events and resources from our 4-member grape growing associations. And actually in this newsletter, we did share as well the Clean Vines Frequently Asked Questions. We kind of highlighted that in its own newsletter. We also host timely and themed webinars, typically in the winter months, as we understand that the spring and summer months are pretty busy in the vineyards. These webinars are always recorded and posted to our website and YouTube channel. And actually, we have a webinar coming up at the end of January, the theme of recovery from climate-related events, so very timely considering what we're discussing here today. So look out on CGCN's website and social medias. In early January, we'll be posting the registration link. We attend as many conferences as we can with recent sponsorship and presence at the last Grape Growers Association of Nova Scotia summer tour that happened in August. And we also had a presence at the Ontario Craft Wineries Conference in April. And it is CGCN's goal to get out to BC, hopefully within the next fiscal year. And if not, the next 2 fiscal years. We regularly update our resources blog on our website with research publications and reports such as growing degree days and bud hardiness. This is also where we are posting our annual plain language summaries from all of the Agrias Science Cluster research. This is also where we posted the Clean Vines FAQ. So that's uploaded directly to the website, and keep your eye out on the resources and updates blog for any other news and very timely resources. And then lastly, you can find us on social media channels, Facebook, X, and YouTube. And with that, I'll wrap up my presentation. Here's my contact information along with CGCN's project manager. If you have any questions about the Clean Vines FAQ, about our programs, or want to share my contact information with other nurseries or growers who want to get involved, please write this down. I am more than happy to set up meetings and arrange phone calls for anybody that is looking to get involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Darian. Well done. If we have questions before we move on to our Clean Plant Toolkit, can you pop them in the chat? And we could address them. Otherwise, I'll introduce Tyrion Skull, who is the director. Is that right, Tyrion? What's your title? For the BC Grape Growers Association, and they've been working with the Wine Grape Council to create the Clean Vine Toolkit that will help you in making your purchases. So take it away, Tyrion.
Okay, I'll be super quick. So if there's questions that people have,
Yeah.
I won't take too long. Please feel free to put them in the chat. So I have to give a huge amount of credit to Ruth King, who put this together. So basically synthesized, because this is such a new program and because we're feeling quite pressured with, with the situation in BC and lots of replanting happening and wanting to make sure that people have information and are able to make good decisions about what they're planting. We've sort of synthesized all that information that we just got from Darian and from Sarah into this document. We're really new, again, very early in the stages of putting this all together. So we're hoping this will be a living document that we can update it regularly, and make sure that the information is up to date. And as we sort of, as the program moves along and gets a little more sophisticated and changes happen, and we start to understand better what it means for implementation in BC, we'll update it and share more information. Mostly, I think, those links to the nurseries, and we have tried over the last couple of years at our grower days to introduce growers to nurseries and certify nurseries that provide certified vines. The BCGA is really on board with trying to get certified vines in BC. Mainly because we feel it is in the best interest of the longevity of the industry. If it's one of the big tools that you have to mitigate risk against disease and pests. And if you're taking a risk, that if you're not planting clean vines now, that you're going to be replanting in 10 years because your plants are going to develop disease again. So I think the capital input at the beginning, if you can get vines, is important. I think that's all I have to say. Are there any questions?
So Tyrion, there's a requirement under the replant program to use certified vines. Is that not right?
Oh dear. So I hesitate to answer that because it is a provincial response program, but it's my understanding that it is like a points-based system. So they're asking that you get clean vines. The CFIA recommendations are part of that. So, and they're fairly basic. So if you're importing vines, you should be able to get CFIA vines. But if I'm not 100% sure to tell you, honestly, if you have to get clean vines or if it's just part of the point system. And if you get clean vines or virus tested, pardon me, we'll start using that term, virus tested vines, you get higher on the list for approving your application. But we do highly, highly recommend that you get virus tested vines, because this is, and we're going to do, I'm hoping that we will do more studies and a lot more education over the next few years about the importance of virus tested vines and the impact that disease has for production.
So we have, I'm sure we've had a Third Thursday presentation from Jose Torres, and regarding his work on viruses, and one of the things I recall him talking about was roguing.
Yes.
How successful the roguing was. And so I'll ask Kate to after the presentation to send out the links to that particular presentation, if that's possible, Kate, so that people can see where we're at with that. And Jose is continuing under the current funding cycle virus research as well, which I think is super important. Mostly, especially, you know, in areas where vineyards are so close together, and we're concerned about spread of virus, right? Wow, you guys must have given really, really good presentations, because there's no questions at all.
Jose's got one actually in the queue there.
Oh. Okay. Oh, sorry. Oh, well, funny, I should mention you, Jose. So a question for Sarah: does the CFIA continuously monitor the status of countries exporting vines to Canada with regard to new disease and pathogen outbreaks in those countries, and how these affect the certification programs?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Jose. And I can get started, but I will turn to my colleagues at the lab in case they've got anything to add here as well. But I will say that, you know, as a CFIA, as a science-based regulatory organization, we're constantly kind of scanning the science and keeping an eye on these types of things. And at the basis of all of our decisions is really that element of risk. So what's the risk to Canada? So I will say that, yes, we are quite aware. We do have an entire science branch, and they do something called the science scan. And they're constantly kind of, if they see something come up, you know, they'll share that with us in policy. And that's where we kind of review the science and make that decision to, you know, if it's something new of concern, whether it meets the criteria for regulation. There's very specific elements that need to be considered if we regulate, you know, a specific pest. But in general, the way that that systems approach kind of certification program is built, because it's so layered and it has so many different elements working together, it often will cover a very generic testing scheme, so that they are kind of capturing all of those different, like with the bioassay, for example, similar to what we do here. It's not always very specific testing. They will do a lot of the same testing elements that we do here in Canada, and capture that kind of wide net of virus testing, for example. So all that to say, yes, we do keep a close eye on the science. We have really great working relationships with these countries, and we'll, you know, if something comes up that's of concern, we'll start to have those conversations. I will note another great example is the spotted lanternfly that's, you know, we know is in the United States, of which grapevines can be a pathway. And so, you know, those conversations are taking place on an ongoing basis with the United States. And when it came on our radar and when it started to kind of, you know, become a risk and really a concern to Canada, one of the first things we did was add it to our list of regulated pests. So we are taking active measures to make sure we're keeping an eye on these programs. And if anyone else is CFIA on the line wants to jump in and add to that, feel free. But in general, yes. And also just to add to that, we have that ongoing element of audit that takes place where we're actually physically testing vines that are coming in, and we will focus on different countries. So if there was a country that had an outbreak, you know, we could kind of prioritize that in a certain year to do our testing for programs that we may have a higher concern or questions or just want to keep an eye on.
Thanks, Sarah. Tyrion has some specific questions about the inspections on imports and site visits. Does that mean a grower who imports plant directly from another country can expect their shipment to be inspected? Are there costs involved? Can they expect to have their vineyard inspected after planting? And what are the vineyards inspected for?
Another great question. And if I may see if my colleague Allison Charlton would be willing to jump on. She's here from operations branch and might be able to talk a little bit more about the inspection piece. In short, every import that comes into Canada is subject to inspection. But in terms of the costing and things, I'm not quite as familiar with that. So
my question is specifically around, like the management and budgeting, thinking about timelines, and will inspection add to timelines? And then, any costs involved, so that growers have to actually budget for costs
right. And Allison, apologies for putting you on the spot. I don't know if you could speak to this or not. And if not, we're always happy to get that information and share it back to the group.
Your audio is not working, Allison. So sometimes, Allison, I have to leave Zoom and come back again to make my audio work. Well, if you want to try that, we'll go on to the next question and then circle back. Okay. Next question is from Hans. Is HTS as a diagnostic tool now officially approved by the CFIA? And if not, is there a timeline for approval? I hope that's not an Allison question too.
It is an Allison question, but a different Allison.
Oh,
that might be. So I can start. I can talk to in terms of the import and the certification programs. I will say, Hans, that one of the things we did update in that NAPO regional standard that I talked about was the incorporation of HTS as an option in certification programs. So we're open to that if it does come in, if it is incorporated into a certification program, we are now able to review that. I will say in the US, we know that they're using HTS in some of their clean plant network facilities, which have also been, approved by the CFIA. And in terms of the CFIA's diagnostic capabilities, I do know that HTS is being used and was being incorporated into the diagnostic pieces at the Sydney lab. And perhaps if Kenji is available, just to give a quick update on those pieces. Sorry, I keep putting everybody on the spot here, but
that's great. You brought your
these are like the,
awesome.
the more of the technical pieces that
that's quite all right.
Quite
Sarah.
as versed in. Thanks, Kenji.
That's why we joined, and appreciate you fielding them. So my name is Kenji Hara. I'm the diagnostic section head for the Sydney lab. So we've started implementing HTS into our testing regime. So those audit samples that were mentioned previously, we've shifted all of our testing over to HTS because it casts that nice wide net to help us identify what might be coming into the country. I can say from the lab perspective, we don't charge anything for that testing, but that said, we do not, on the audit samples, we do not provide results directly to the recipient. It's really just a monitoring program that's for the eyes of the CFIA to basically understand if there is viruses of concern coming in. And should we detect a regulated virus, the agency would take action, but it's not a service. It's not treated as something that is a direct relationship with the importer. And our selection of audit samples is a very sort of light snapshot of the industry. So people importing vines, it's not a guarantee that your importation will be sampled. And even if we do sample, it might be, it'll be 60 cuttings from one variety or maybe two. So it's a fairly small, we try and not make it onerous as far as that goes. And then on the other side, we also use implementation in conjunction with our conventional testing. So as Darian mentioned, those PCRs and ELISAs, and we also perform bioassays to help screen all those imported plants as part of our post-entry quarantine program. And we've added HTS to those to both build our confidence in the HTS technology, as well as give us an opportunity to perhaps identify new pathogens of interest that our current conventional testing might miss. And so we have a long-term plan to eventually have HTS sort of take center stage, but for now, it's all done in concert.
Thanks, Kenji. Tyrion, I'll let you ask the question rather than me reading it out of the chat. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah. I just for Darian, I'm just super curious. You know, is CGCN based on or programs, certification programs from other countries, or do you know of certification programs in other areas that have been around for a little bit longer and have shown success? And do you have any, you know, stats or even anecdotal information? I'm just sort of thinking we need encouragement to
Yeah, I hear that.
join, right? And so this is just so new, I think, to everyone, and we're all learning about it. So, you know, can we learn from other places in the world?
So I can address your first question first. In order for CGCN's board to be able to put together CGCN's protocols back when they were developed in, I want to say it was 2017, between 2017 and 2019, they took inspiration from almost all the certification programs in the United States, New Zealand, and they actually built the protocols around CFIA standards. So taking that as a frame of reference, then building out from there. We don't have any stats as of right now on the benefits of CGCN's programming because it's been so new, and we need to access some funding in order to actually conduct those tests. But when it comes to other certification programs that have proven success, in that Clean Vines FAQ that I've been addressing the entire time, that last question on the form is talking about the benefits of certified clean materials. So there has been studies conducted in New York and in California. And it's actually linked with sources there. So if you want to find that form, read through those studies, that can give you an idea of what the benefits of clean material can show.
Well, and I mean, if people aren't aware of some of the work that Pat Bowen did in the past regarding the quality impact of virus infected vines, and I'm sure that's somewhere on the BC Wine Grape Council website, but you know, the obviously there's an economic impact if yields start to drop, but anecdotally, the industry was finding that there was an economic impact in the fact that infected vines had a reduction in quality, which caused wineries to have to downgrade fruit a couple of tiers, which means, you know, less money per bottle of wine. And you know, it's less tangible than drops in yield, but it's there's data out there and studies out there. So Kate's got some work cut out for her. So we're almost out of time. If there's any other quick questions, you can pop them in the chat or just blurt them out. Otherwise, we will. Okay, we have one for Darian. How does the CGCN decide which repository varieties are being housed at the Sydney lab versus Brock and Covey?
Oh, that's a great question. And actually we don't choose, we choose both. So I guess it just depends on where you're located. I would assume that being in a BC webinar right now, you'd be located in BC, you probably want to have access to that CFI material because it's closest to you. So, but then again, the CFI Center is going through kind of like a transitionary process. So if you wanted to get your hands on any of that material this year, it may be coming from Covey. It really just depends on what we have the capacity to fill. But right now we have 2 repository locations, and this is mainly because of our reach across the nation. And also it's good to have a backup plan in case anything went wrong at one location.
Awesome, thanks, Darian. And Jose has popped into the chat a link to a study out of California, the benefits from certified virus-free nursery stock a case study. So Kate will also include that. You could quickly click on it now and save it. And I'm going to tell you that our next presentation in January, we believe, will be Simone Castellarin on using remote sensing technology to determine intra-vineyard vigor in fields and relating to variations in fruit quality. That'll be January 16th, the third Thursday of January. And have a happy holiday, everybody. Thanks to the presenters today. And we'll see y'all next year. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Have a happy
Thank
holidays.
you.
Thank
I
you.
think you.